Yuta is controlling Satoru Gojo's body, but there's a catch. Yuta's technique has a time limit of just 5 minutes. What will happen to Gojo's body after this period? If you want to know more about this and the options available to Yuta and Gojo's body from here on, join me in this video to understand everything about Yuta Okkotsu's possession of the blue-eyed sensei's body. We know that Okkotsu's technique has a limitation, which I will explain further in the video. But first, please like this video and subscribe to the channel with the bell icon activated so you don't miss any updates. Before discussing the options presented in Chapter 261 of the Jujutsu Kaisen manga, it's necessary to explain and contextualize how Yuta Okkotsu's innate copying technique used to work and how it works now. In the past, when Yuta had Rika Orimoto, his childhood girlfriend, by his side as a vengeful spirit reincarnated after her physical death, he could use copied techniques without limit, as long as both had cursed energy. In the movie Jujutsu Kaisen 0, we saw Yuta use cursed speech through a megaphone, thanks to Rika's full presence, which allowed him to use this technique without a time limit, as long as his energy didn't run out. He also used a technique similar to Purple Hollow. At the end of Jujutsu Kaisen 0, Yuta freed Rika Orimoto's soul. He believed he had been cursed by her, but in fact, it was the opposite. He had cursed her. Yuta's desire not to lose Rika activated the curse, turning her into a vengeful spirit. Yuta had the key to free Rika's soul, allowing her to rest in peace. At the end of Jujutsu Kaisen 0, Yuta broke this bond and freed his beloved soul, so she could move on to another life. As the years passed, Jujutsu Kaisen continued, and we learned that after freeing his beloved soul, Yuta Okkotsu received a Shikigami in the form of the original Rika Orimoto as a gift from her. It's no longer Rika's soul, but her will to be with Yuta and not leave him alone is so strong that her manifestation turned into a soulless Shikigami, completely symbiotic with Yuta Okkotsu. From then on, Rika became a Shikigami that stores weapons, techniques copied by Yuta, and a reserve tank with 100% of Yuta's cursed energy to help him in battlefields, as he often spends more energy than he has. It's explained that this Shikigami Rika has a maximum time for total assimilation with Yuta, allowing him to use all the copied techniques on the battlefield. Outside of his domain expansion, Yuta depends on this total assimilation with Rika to access these techniques. Within the domain expansion, Yuta can use any of the copied techniques indefinitely, as seen in his fight against the King of Curses, Raiman Sukuna. However, despite being extremely powerful and allowing Yuta to use several copied techniques, this assimilation has a limitation. It only lasts 5 minutes. After this period, the total symbiosis between Yuta and Rika ends, and Yuta can no longer use the copied techniques, relying only on his physical abilities and cursed tools to face his opponents. So, let's explain how Yuta manages to copy techniques. According to Chapter 261, he copies techniques by having Rika eat a part of the body of the sorcerer whose technique he wants to assimilate. In Yuryu's case, Rika ate her arm, and in Kenjaku's case, she ate his head, which Yuta had kept in previous chapters. Once Rika consumes a part of the sorcerer's body, she stores that ability within her, allowing Yuta to use it as he wishes, even amplifying the use of the techniques. I explained all this to lay the foundation for the explanation given by Mei in Chapter 261. See, Yuta can activate the 5 minutes of total assimilation with Rika, signaled by the cursed energy emanating from the ring. While on the operating table, Yuta activated this total assimilation. During this time, the surgical team removed Gojo's brain, discarded it, and placed Yuta's in its place. Then, Yuta activated Kenjaku's technique, managed to possess Gojo's body, and used reverse energy to finalize the healing of Gojo's body's wounds. Now, Yuta is controlling Gojo's body on the battlefield against Raiman Sukuna. However, there's a problem brought up by Maki. After the 5 minutes of total assimilation with Rika, Yuta can no longer use Kenjaku's copied technique, just as he can't use any copied techniques. Although Yuta is in Gojo's body, allowing him to use Gojo's techniques indefinitely, Kenjaku's technique is a copied one, to which he doesn't have physical access. Therefore, after 5 minutes, Kenjaku's technique expires, and from there, 3 options are presented. The first option is that if Kenjaku's technique requires constant use, meaning it must always be active to keep the corpse alive through the shaman's brain that possessed it, in this case, Yuta's brain, then after the 5 minutes are up, Gojo's body would simply collapse in front of Sukuna. In this scenario, neither Gojo's body nor Yuta's soul and brain could be saved, since Yuta's body was discarded. This would imply that Yuta would lose his soul and brain, essentially passing away. This is the first possible outcome. However, I don't think this will happen. If the technique required constant use, Yuta would already be dead, as the brain transfer and reconnecting Satoru Gojo's body with reverse energy likely weren't instantaneous. Considering that Gojo's body was cut into 3 parts, as Arita mentioned, the brain swap and body healing process must have taken more than 5 minutes. Therefore, I believe this first option is invalid, and the technique is not of constant use, so Yuta is safe and sound. The second option is that if Kenjaku's technique requires frequent use, meaning it needs to be activated now to possess the body and then reactivated after some time, e.g. a week, to maintain control. In this case, Yuta wouldn't die after 5 minutes but might eventually die if he needed to periodically reactivate Kenjaku's technique. I'm using a week as a fictional interval for the video's sake, but it could be any period, such as a year, 10 years, or even 100 years. However, this second option also doesn't make much sense. After 5 minutes, Yuta can't use the copy techniques, but just as Kenjaku has access to his innate technique in other people's bodies, it's reasonable to think that Yuta would also have access to his original technique while in Gojo's body. Thus, he could simply reactivate Kenjaku's technique. After the 5 minutes, he would lose temporary access but could restore his energy and technique, allowing him to use the copy technique again. We saw this in the Sendai fight. Yuta used Yuro's technique, then after a few minutes, he was able to use it again at the end of the battle against Rika. Therefore, if the second option is true, Yuta would manage just fine. The third option is that Kenjaku's technique is a one-time use. In other words, it is activated just to swap brains and, after that, doesn't need to be used again. Thus, Yuta could simply control the stolen body without any additional issues. In this case, Yuta would remain permanently alive in Satoru Gojo's body, without needing to reactivate Kenjaku's technique. These are the 3 possible options, each presenting a different scenario for Yuta's future in Gojo's body. So, Yuta would remain permanently in the powerful body of the blue-eyed sensei. If you've made it this far in the video, you've realized that in all 3 options, Yuta ends up alive and controlling Gojo's body just fine. As I mentioned, the first option is the riskiest, involving constant use, but I believe the process in Gojo's body took more than 5 minutes. The complete healing, except for the scar on the forehead, suggests that the healing process took some time. Therefore, the first option can be ruled out, leaving the second and third options, which would allow Yuta to handle the situation. In my opinion, there isn't a real risk of anything happening to Yuta after the 5 minutes, unless Gij creates a situation where Yuta can't use his innate technique in the same way Kenjaku used it in other people's bodies. This would need to be very well explained. If that's not the case, Yuta will be fine. In my opinion, what will probably happen is that Yuta won't be able to fully utilize Gojo's techniques in the blue-eyed sensei's body. As a result, he might be overcome by the King of Curses or perhaps possessed by Kenjaku through the brain that is inside Rika or Emoto. But that's a topic for another video, which I'll release before the spoilers drop on Thursday. Share your thoughts in the comments about what you think could happen after the 5 minutes. And of course, if you've made it this far, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell. This really helps and supports my work in bringing new content for you to enjoy and have fun with. So, with that said, see you in the next video.